All right, hello, Miss Hannah here, and I'm going to give you a little introduction to poetry. If you had me last year, then this might not be all that new, but if you didn't, welcome and enjoy. So, what are some things that come to mind when you think of poetry? Is the answer something along the lines of, ugh, or it's boring? Or what about, it's confusing and I just don't like it? Well, if those were your responses or something along those lines, you are not alone. But did you know that I, Miss Hannah, an English teacher, used to hate poetry and now I love it? And like I said, if you had me last year, you know this. So seriously, how? How did I get out of the funk of hating poetry completely? What changed, right? Well, I will tell you. So I realized that poetry is a means of self-expression. It's a way to express yourself in a way that's not as traditional as, say, writing an essay. Not all poetry has to subscribe to the conventional formats, so it doesn't all have to be typical rhyming, maybe even Dr. Seuss style or super fancy flowery language, right? There's free verse poetry, there's spoken word poetry, there are fun types of poetry that exist. The subject matter can vary. I know that when I was growing up, the poems that I was reading were, love poems from old white British dudes, and that didn't really apply to me and my life. So knowing that the subject matter can vary actually really changed my perspective. Poetry is simply making art with your words, and even song lyrics can be and are poetry. So we're going to play a little quick game here. This is going to be hip hop or Shakespeare. I want you to take a guess as to whether or not the following lines were said by William Shakespeare or a rapper. So the first one is, to destroy the beauty from which one came. The next one we've got is, maybe it's hatred I spew, maybe it's food for the spirit. Then we've got, men would rather use their broken records than their bare hands. And we've got, I was not born under a rhyming planet. And we've got, the most benevolent king communicates through your dreams. And lastly, we've got, Socrates' philosophy and hypotheses can't define me. All right, so ponder these for a second, and then we'll see. All right, so here are the answers. So, to destroy the beauty from which one came, that's hip hop. That's Jay-Z. Maybe it's hatred I spew, maybe it's food for the spirit. That's hip hop. That's Jay-Z and Eminem. Men would rather use their broken records than their bare hands. That's Shakespeare from the play Othello. I was not born under a rhyming planet. That's Shakespeare from Much Ado About Nothing. The most benevolent king communicates through your dreams. That's hip hop. That's Wu-Tang Clan. And Socrates' philosophy and hypotheses can't define me is hip hop. Also Wu-Tang Clan. So what does this prove? This shows us that poetry is versatile. Poetry doesn't have to sound like everything you've heard before, and poetry has more freedom than you know. Of course, certain types of poetry has, rules and forms, but not everything has to be boring and unenjoyable. If you like music and you like the lyrics, well, that's poetry. Hate to break it to you, but now you like poetry. I want you to think of poems as different forms of expression and not something that causes you to shut down. Not all poems are about unrelatable experiences. The trick is to be open to finding and creating poetry that relates more to you. You need to use poetry to express yourself, to understand how someone else was expressing themselves. And just be open. I don't necessarily need you to become a hardcore poetry fanatic. by the end of this. You don't need to stand poetry, right? But I do want you to at least become comfortable enough with it where you don't completely shut down and disregard it as a valid form of art or literature. All right.